Even the last discussion that happened maybe about a few minutes back, the CIOs got bashed. That's what my friends were telling me. So in this panel, it's the CIOs and some of the consultants who are going to try to look at it from a business perspective and help the CEOs appreciate that we do understand business. Yeah. So this is about customer experience. Can you if you just give me one moment, I will just get this started. Yeah. Okay, so it's all about customer experience. I know there was a phrase that said, "Who's really paying attention?" Probably some of you guys noticed the misspelling. There's no buzzword we're trying to create out here. It just was a typo. Yeah. So customer experience, I guess a lot of us in this room and obviously outside are doing quite a bit of work in improving the experience we deliver to our customers, right? The question is, are we looking at customer experience in its entirety, or are we looking at specific aspects and then trying to get those aspects addressed? Okay. So what we're going to try to do with this panel is try to demystify the meaning of the phrase customer experience. What does it really mean? Okay, and get to really laying out certain building blocks or steps which a growing retailer can take. Yeah. So I'd like to start with a little bit of a little video, and then we'll take it from there. Start, but should get it going. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so just pay a little bit of attention to this video, and then we'll take it.
Hey, this is Dave.
Stop. Delete.
Message 2.
Hello, Mr. Carlson. Your reservation request for February.
Stop. Delete.
Message 3.
Yeah, Terry, that meeting at 4 has been moved up to noon. Call me as soon as you can.
Warning. Breakdown imminent. CarTrack recommends immediate service.
Oh no, my meeting.
To locate your nearest service station, turn right at Alameda. Continue north for 1 mile. Turn left at Herschel. Proceed 2 miles to the next service station.
Hi. Hi. Terry Carlson? Yes? CarTrack alerted us you were on your way. I've got your paperwork ready to go if you'll just sign right here. Great. Well, I guess all I need now is a cab.
CarTrack has arranged for a cab to pick you up, Mr. Carlson.
I guess all I need now is $1 million. Can't blame a guy for trying, right?
Okay, so anyone want to hazard a guess what happened there? What we just saw was a person who's bought a product. The product is giving him information at various points, in real time, in fact. When he has a problem with the product, which is a car in this case, the car automatically recognizes that he's got a problem. Okay, once it recognizes he's got the problem, it has sent the information to the physical side, which is the person at the gas station. First thing, it navigates him to the right place. Then it makes sure that the person at the gas station is aware of this guy's name. And the person then welcomes him in the right manner. Once he welcomes him, he gives him whatever information he needs, and a cab has already been called for. So what's really happened is an end-to-end connected experience for the customer. Of course, he didn't get the $1 billion, so that didn't close the loop. But that's really what it is about, right? creating an end-to-end, understanding the customer really, anticipating what they need, and then doing something about it. So I'd like to open it with that. I'd like to get onto the panel and open it up for a discussion. What I'll start with is the consultants, the Microsofts and the KPMGs, to share their view of what did you see here maybe, or how would you like to explain your interpretation of the phrase customer experience.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Vikram, for asking that question, because we do it for a living, and I think, if I was to look at something which is called customer experience, I would say it is the difference between possibly what the brand promises and what we as an individual in an organization deliver. So basically, just to take an example, and I was talking about it in the speaker lounge out here. Day before, I was at one of the largest 5-star hotels, and that hotel promises a lot of things as far as the customer is concerned. And there was something that I ordered out there. Me and my colleague, I'm a vegetarian, so my colleague got vegetarian, I got non-veg. When I got the non-veg, I thought it was paneer. I had the first bite, and then I realized it was chicken. And I was obviously very upset. My colleague was very upset that he's been given vegetarian out there. And we were just 7 of us sitting in the restaurant, and it took 40 minutes for the order to come. So the entire experience was terrible. But then, when we started paying, because we did, they replaced my order, they got me what I wanted, all of that happened. When we started paying, they said that, ma'am, this is on the house. Because, we were not able to deliver what you wanted, so this is on the house. And you expect a 5-star hotel to be able to do that. But then what he told me after that, actually, just changed the mood. What he said is, when we insisted on paying, we said, look, you've served us, it really doesn't matter, we'll pay for it. He said, no, ma'am. We out here, get money from you, not for the food, but for delivering an experience. And since we haven't delivered that experience, we don't think we should be charging you that money. And I thought that was such a profound statement. So there was a brand promise, and this was how, the brand promise was finally delivered to us. So when we are able to bridge that gap, it's actually, when you actually go back and say, okay, I've had the actual customer experience that the brand has promised me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting.
Sure.
Samir?
I'll probably put it in simplistic words. In my opinion, a customer experience is about the memory and the taste an organization leaves behind in the entire customer journey. It can be anything. It can be during the sales cycle, it can be during the service cycle, it can be while you're interacting with a person, it can be an experience at a restaurant. But it's fundamentally the memory which is left behind, because that's the true brand of an organization, right? You might be promising something, but if you're delivering something else, there is a disconnect between them. And that to me is the most important aspect, is how do you make that interaction something worthwhile and something remembering. I would also add one more thing, and I think this example is good. Many people feel that the only thing which is important is to give a positive experience. Now, you cannot give a positive experience or a delightful experience to every possible customer in the world all the time. It's just not practical, okay? So you do make mistakes, because it's human to make mistakes. And sometimes a process will be broken, sometimes a technology will be broken, sometimes it's a human error, anything can happen. But what's important is, how do you deal with that error afterwards? Do you have empathy towards it? Do you take feedback? Do you actually do an action on it, and do you close loop? Because that is a big way to negate a bad customer experience. And I think that the example which you gave was very good.
Yeah, so I think you're bringing up, both of you are bringing up very valid points, that it's beyond just the service that you're getting. It's making sure that you're addressing the ambience, the promise beyond just the actual service or the product that you bought. Let's look at it from a retailer's perspective, and let's hear, maybe Alicia, if you want to share from your perspective, maybe your organization or anywhere else, how do you view customer experience as a retailer?
I think as a retailer, what we look to do is to leave behind a sense of customer delight. That's the main focus. Now, there are 3 points at where customers looking at us as Metro Shoes in particular. One, when they're searching. So one, are we making it easy for them to search? Are they able to interact with us? Are they able to find the information they want from us? 2, during the purchase process. And 3, after sales. As long as you're aware that you're listening to the customer as an organization, whether they're talking to you in the store, whether they're talking to you online, on Facebook, are you reading their feedback, are you responding to them? That is when you know you are truly listening to the customer and making sure that they're part of your transformation as a company.
Meenakshi, you work with Vandana Luthra, which is about skincare. That's a fairly touch and feel and a customer reaction kind of a product. Would you be able to share with us, from your perspective, what does it mean other than selling a product, going beyond that?
So, firstly, I resonate with what you said, Rachna, and even you, Samik, on the fact that it's about the brand and what is the holistic customer experience that we are delivering and what memories the customer take back. So it is not just about selling. What I would extend that to say that, from the every touch point that the customer engages with an organization, from selling till consumption and even afterwards feedback, etc. It's an end-to-end experience. So we can't be looking at those magic moments when something goes aha for the customer. What we say is that every single time, every single moment that the customer engages with us, it is an opportunity for us to give a good experience. Point number one. The second thing is, which is very, very, I believe is important, is that every customer is unique. So for the same, you specifically mentioned skincare products, for example. For the same product, the reaction or the response that I can get from one customer will be very different from another customer. It is very difficult to box them as, one kind of behavior or one kind of response that we expect from them. I'm a believer of what Dr. C.K. Pehlad said, n equal to 1. Every customer is unique. So with that background, the product selling part per se is only one part of it. There is a process around that. But taking it to the next level of experience, engaging with the customer to say what it is all about, for example, our tagline says natural sciences for the product business. We are in the healthcare product and education business. For the product business, the tagline says natural sciences. So a lot of our customers are very, very curious about, what is it? What is natural sciences? What is natural about that? Going a step further, they are very, very curious about, biologically, how is it that we are promising what we are promising? They talk about collagen to us, they talk about, adipose tissue to us, they talk about specific scientific repercussions of what we do. And that brings in a lot of the confidence in our products.
Okay. So later on, we'll just touch upon the point of people and reacting to customer, customer questions or complaints, etc. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Vinod, you've had an opportunity to work with multiple organizations, Tesco in the past, and others, Airlines, I guess. You may want to share with us, what do you see across industries?
Yeah, thanks, Vikram. Thanks for having me as part of the panel. It's, like you said, it's a lot of esteemed colleagues here, so I'll try and share a couple of my personal experiences and also some of the experiences from other industries. I've basically worked in a couple of domains, airlines, banking, and retail. But want to share, all of us as human beings have a tendency to remember negative experiences more than positive experience. So very recently, I've been with one of the, as a platinum member of one of the hospitality companies for last 15 years. And by and large, I would say 95% of the time, consistent experience. But a very recent trip overseas, what happened was they took my credit card at the time I was checking in, and they blocked the card for, they were supposed to block it for just the incidentals. But I go to my room, and I see that it's blocked for about $900. That's pretty much the max amount I could use on the credit card. I think the max was $1,000. So I go back and I call the front desk and I said, look guys, I think you've blocked, I'm here for 3 days and looks like you've blocked my entire card for the duration of my checkout. So the response I get back from them is that we'll release hold when you check out. I said, but I need to use my card and it's not like I'm having 5 different cards, right? So they didn't really solve my problem. They got the manager's manager and everybody else, but I said, look, I need my card to be released. And they offered to have me speak to my bank, which at this time, it's in a different time zone, and I'm 10,000 miles away. But for all the great experience I've had with this hotel chain for the 10 plus years, the only thing that lingers in my mind is this one extreme bad, negative experience. So I think what companies should strive for is really creating a consistent experience across different touch points. That's what's going to be unique in the memory of that customer. If you take an airline as an example, your experience with the brand and with that company starts from the moment you really start looking for the flights, whether it's online or through a travel agent. And you take it from there to, when you enter the gate, and check in, and then in the lounge and on board, in flight, and you complete the entire experience and they complete the entire life cycle of the experience with that entity. So the customer experience is not something that is in a narrow slice of what the value chain of that company is, but it's more holistic and across the entire life cycle that the customer is touching or feeling your brand, right? So in a sense, it's really it's the emotional connect that you create with the customer, whether you're dealing with the physical aspect of it or whether you're dealing with the sensory aspect of it. And that's what the companies have to keep in mind when it comes to customer experience. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. But that, to me, is the essence of customer experience. And how do you create consistency of the experience, across different touch points, across whether it's the physical or the digital, and over time. It's not just at a given point you give a great experience and then your next subsequent experiences are less than stellar.
So I think it's interesting that you talk about a consistent and connected customer experience and the end-to-end. I think that's what I'm hearing from everyone. It's fairly, a common line of thought here. Just kind of summarize. So what we're talking about is that customer experience is not just about. It's different from customer service that you would offer to a person in the store, for example, or on an online. It starts with maybe just prior to even the purchase. It's about connecting with the customer, then getting the customer in, making sure that he's served in the right manner, they have the right information in the store as and when they need it. The checkout is good. It's smooth, the product experience is good beyond that, and then any responses, etc., are also handled. So I think that's the broad view. It's an end-to-end experience. It's not about customer service or my billing experience or my web browsing customer journey, etc. Just want to take this further a little bit. So while we talk about connected and all that consistency, that's what we are looking to do. So those are really inputs into the process. The output obviously has to be some kind of value that's generated for the business. Would any one of you like to talk about really why would we do this customer experience thing? What's the value we're looking to generate out of it at the end of the day? Samik, would you want to take a shot at that? And Rachna, maybe post that? Sure.
Sure. See, at the end of the day, let's come back to fundamentals. Everybody is in this business to make money. That's the fundamental of opening an organization. So at the end of the day, that's your biggest KPI. Whether you're making money, whether you're profitable, whether you're increasing share, etc. But my view to the whole thing is that is just an outcome of the journey, the process, the people, the technology, which you implement to get that to happen, correct? That's the end goal, but that's not the journey in itself. In my opinion, most of the organizations make this mistake of trying to go for wallet share. Okay, that I would do acquisitions, I will do install-based cross-sells and upsells, I will take care of my existing customers and all of those things. But a wallet share is actually a manifestation of what I call is mind share. And mind share is a manifestation of heart share. So if you have heart share, which I came back to, it's your experience. If your experience is touching, if your experience is good, you will go back to that organization, you will go back to that brand. When you go back to that brand, you go back to it because you've got mind share, correct? Think about it. You talk a good example of credit cards. You open anybody's wallet today, there are so many credit cards. Everybody has plethora of it, and everybody is chasing you to have one more plastic card out there. But the one which you use is the one which you have mind share of, correct? Irrespective. You don't sit out there and do calculations of which billing date is when and how much of interest rate do I save out here and how much can I transfer, etc. It's about the one which you have mind share of. That mind share comes from an experience. That experience can be the smallest experience. For example, HSBC allowing a premium lounge in an overseas airport somewhere because of having an HSBC Premier card. Okay, it can be as simple as that. But that creates an experience. It creates a stickiness in your heart and then to your mind. And then eventually you use that card more, which gives more transactions to the bank, which gives more money to the bank. So that's the way I look at the journey.
Yes, I would tend to agree, Samit. Customer experience is equal to money. So, and I'm with your permission. How many of you own Apple mobile phones out here? And use more than, let's say, 4 or 5 features? Yeah, and would you, when the next version comes, you would run back to something like that? You know, it's basically, you know, whatever experience that a brand provides, and in your case, let's say a Surface or, you know, any of those products that you have, whatever that brand provides as an experience to you gives you something. It gives you happiness. It gives you social status in a lot of these cases. Why would everybody want to go to that Orlando Disneyland and not even that Paris Disneyland? It's because it promises something. It gives you something which makes you happy and makes you go back to that place again. So I think customer experience is equal to money. You're looking at a lifetime value of a customer here. You're wanting the customer to come back to you. And that's the reason that you would want to, you know, sort of go back to, you know, your customer and make sure, give the experience that he returns. And everybody out here knows that how many times of money that you need to spend to acquire a new customer vis-a-vis retain a new one? 6 times? Any other? Sorry? 20 times. Okay, it's actually around 5 to 6 times is what, you know, you really need to do. And I don't even know if you know that when you are talking about these e-commerce company, a customer acquisition costs them $6,000. And look at the amount of money. If this $6,000 customer just bought, let's say, $200 of worth of stuff and did not come back, what did it mean to you? So as far as customer experience is concerned, you know, if I was to be extremely ruthless, it's about revenue. You have to make sure you're giving that experience because you want that customer to come back to you.
I think that's absolutely well said. And on that note of Apple, let me put up an interesting video that I got from obviously the leader of customer experience in the world. I'd just like to play this video.
Thankfully, we sold off Nokia.
Can I have someone to help me switch here? Let's just get the video on. Okay, so just listen to Steve Jobs, my role model, speak about customer experience.
And one of the things I've always found is that you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room. And I've got the scar tissue to prove it. And I know that it's the case. And as we have tried to come up with a strategy and a vision for Apple, it started with what incredible benefits can we give to the customer? Where can we take the customer? Not starting with, let's sit down with the engineers and figure out what awesome technology we have, and then how are we going to market that.
Yeah, so really he talks about looking at the customer and then doing the technology that's going to satisfy the customer, not looking at all this fancy stuff that we have today and then searching around for a problem that it can fix. Yeah, I think we tend to have, move towards that direction, but it's all about putting the customer first and then designing the experience around it. So on that note, I think I'd like to shift gears and say, okay, we've got a decent understanding of customer experience. So what have companies done about it? Yeah? Who are those companies that have put customer first and said, let's design the experience around it? And I'd like to lead it with one example of the coffee chain Starbucks. Yeah, Starbucks is all about selling coffee, just plain and simple coffee. But I'm sure, so how many of you go to Starbucks on a regular basis? Hands. Yeah, I guess most of the people in this room. When you walk into a Starbucks store, what's the first experience that you have? At least I get the smell of coffee. Yeah. So they've made sure that I get a smell of coffee. There is music playing, which obviously could relate to some people and maybe not. But what's the other thing that touches your senses? So he's touched your nasal sense. Somebody shouts out to you, right? Welcome to Starbucks, in a very friendly manner. So you've got someone who's really welcoming you in, not in a mechanical, robotic manner, but they generally seem to be quite friendly. Yeah. So they've now touched upon your hearing senses. They touch upon your seeing senses all around the store, so to say. What they also make sure you understand is, so in the past when somebody was making coffee, I would actually wonder what's going on behind in the kitchens. I'd always wonder what's the quality of water they use, how do they actually make this stuff? Can I trust this piece of product that I'm going to drink? What Starbucks has very smartly done is to make it open in front of everyone. So they're watching you make the coffee, so it's completely trustworthy, builds credibility, as well as it allows you to see where in the process is your coffee. So they don't have to tell you, listen, it's taking 2 minutes. You're actually able to see it getting made. So they've kind of managed your expectations all through the moment you walked into the store. And I think that's an example of brilliant customer expectations and a customer experience. And more importantly, it's not about just putting the ideas in place, but it's about execution end of the day. So how well have they executed on that? Yeah, so I'll lead with that. And maybe ask the panel, maybe Vinod, if you can share what are other companies doing, maybe worldwide or closer to home, India? Where are they in their whole journey?
Yeah. So I just remembered something. If any of you have read the book called From Last to First, or From Worst to First, it's written by Gordon Bethune, who's the CEO of Continental Airlines. He came from Boeing, was the CEO of Boeing, and then subsequently he became the CEO of Continental Airlines. So Gordon talks about this one thing, back to what Vikram was mentioning. For most of us who are in technology, and when you speak to the architects or the purely programmer kind of people, it's all about, let me first jump to a solution, right? Let me figure out what tools I can use, or what programming language I want to use. So one of the things that Gordon always used to ask his team, whether it was the design team or the technology team, was, will my passenger in row 5A pay for this? Will he like this? Would he love this? Would he be delighted by this, right? So basically what he's doing is he's challenging his team, both his, the aircraft design team as well as the technology team, to make sure that all your decisions are design-led, right? So that's really working backwards from, what your customer would like to see or perceive and feel good about. And also not just that, is he willing to pay for that service, right? Are we establishing value for the level of service that you're providing or the experience that you want to provide to the customer? So that's where I think this whole route of design thinking has begun to take shape. This is a big, big thing in the US now, and there's a big thing, it's slowly made its way into India. And a lot of companies are, a lot of even, I would say, stodgy companies who were engineering-led, like the likes of the BMW and the SAP have started make this the DNA of, let's start thinking from a customer angle and rework, our proposal, our approach towards solving these customer problems. And I think that's paramount, and that's really paramount for us in how we start looking at taking the solutions to the customer, be it retail, airline, bank, I mean, irrespective of any domain that we are in, I think we need to be customer-led, and that's really where the industry is going.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'd like to pass this on to Alicia. So Alicia, I have been a customer of Metro Shoes, and every time, or whenever, I will not say every time, but whenever I go to a Metro Shoes, the person greets me with a lot of respect. There's a lot of kind of personability about the whole, trying on the shoe and all that kind of stuff. With y'all now looking at online and the whole digital space, how do you see yourselves in this whole journey? And can you share with us all the challenges you faced, etc.?
Okay, Vikram, so the way I see it is that today products are becoming more commoditized as we go forward. Globally, sourcing is becoming easier. Accessibility is easier. So the products that we now give the customer, fairly common in terms of whether it's from an Aldo or from a Metro, most of the factories may be similar. So how do you go beyond and how do you translate into customer service? I liked your example of Starbucks because what I believe is that we're moving from a fast food world to a fast fashion world. Now, what are the implications of that? One would be personalization. You need to know who your customer is. Wouldn't it be brilliant if your customer loyalty number knew the width of your foot? So that tomorrow, when you come into the store, you'd be able to say, okay, these are the products you've bought, this is the width of your foot, so these would be the products that would suit your foot. Or let's take it to the next level. 5 years down, hyper-local manufacturing, we'll put the 3D printed shoe based exactly on your feet specifications. That would be customer delight, and that would be the next level of where retail can go. Let's look at it from a customer service angle. You mentioned the welcome at Metro. Today, I would believe one of the biggest challenges of a retailer is bringing the sales force up to a level where they understand a changing customer's needs. Today, can my sales staff come to you and say, look, these are the styles that are trending online, on Pinterest. Why don't you look at them? Or is the digital screen in my store showing you what are the latest fashion trends? And are you actually using technology to give the customer value rather than for the sake of it? So coming from those angles, I genuinely believe that retail needs to really look at how we're using the human capital we have, enhancing it with technology, and actually delivering to the customer value at the end of the day, because the choices are huge. Today, the customer is king. So how do we align our business so that the customer is part of our transformational journey? There are no traditional companies anymore. Either you're a startup or you're transformational. And it's only by listening to the customer that we need to align ourselves to where we need to go.
Okay. So can I ask you about the skincare products again? they are quite a try and buy kind of products, I guess, to a fair extent, at least maybe for the first buy, if not a repeat. How are you ensuring then that if you do your online play, how are you ensuring that the experience in the store is the actual similar experience here? Yeah.
You know, a few months ago, I was in a similar gathering, a smaller one, and there was one presentation which has remained with me. It was so beautifully crafted that it's remained with me, and I want to allude to that. He presented the challenges of, the upcoming challenges of the physical world as opposed to digital in the form of 10 commandments. And he gave 10 points, and he structured it very well. One remained with me and is relevant here. And he said, thou shalt blur the differences between the physical and the digital. So there is no doubt about the fact that we cannot have an agenda for the physical stores and a separate agenda for the online sales. The consistency of the customer experience that we alluded to earlier clearly kind of falls in this ambit. Try and buy for a product like ours, obviously a big challenge, regardless of the fact some people are experimenting with, sense of smell and all those things. We've talked about that. But it is about how do we create conviction about what is being created and which is consistent in the store as well as in the digital space. That is what gets the confidence built for the customer. More than that, even more than that, we have another wing where we have the opportunity of talking to the customer at great length, which is our therapy sessions. So in those sessions where we have sometimes close to an hour to talk to the customer, that is where the real conversations happen, and that is where the word of mouth gets carried from customer to customer. That works very well for us, Vikram.
Okay. Two of the industries have been very quick to adopt technology to be able to engage with customers all around the world, and well, even in India, are hotels and airlines, in my view. Okay. I think hotels have been very quick to bring in technology in the individual rooms and give information to customers. But some of the things I'm seeing, for example, certain hotels, I was reading about them in China, are the large hotels, engage with the customer on standard instant messaging platforms, right from when the customer has started their reservation to where do we stand. Once you've come into the hotel, here's all your information, you guys, this is how you can go for your lunch, dinner, etc. So, and then kind of having a constant communication with the customer. Now, as a customer, I think that's a pretty good kind of experience, so to say, when someone's giving you information up front. Of course, it's a delicate balance between kind of flooding them with information as opposed to providing it. So it's all about execution. But I think hotels and airlines, and I'll give you one more example of an airline portal in India. Whenever I buy a ticket online, if there are a couple of times when I'm browsing across 2 or 3 different parameters, and say my browsing experience is not complete. So I've kind of come to the payment, then I've gone back, and maybe I've kind of changed my mind or whatever. I realize that I get a phone call within a few minutes from the same travel portal person. And he says, were you trying to do this? And I would turn around and say, yeah. And there have been cases where I've not been able to get my payment through. And they say, okay, we'll help you. And they complete the transaction on the phone. I think that's a wow experience, and that's in India. People are actually doing it, and they're doing it well. So I think that's a good transformation of web translating into the physical, making a phone call to the person and actually closing the loop. Yeah, go ahead, Vinod, and then you can pass it on to Samik post that. Yeah.
I just want to have a comment. So you said it's all about execution. I think here's an anecdote from experience. So we had, this is not in India, but still it's a relevant example. This business had multiple online formats, general merchandise, grocery, entertainment, and so on. And there was a real scenario where a mom wants to have an evening party for her daughter's graduation, and she wants to order some stuff, it was party wares, which included multiple things. But the situation was that she actually had to go to different online sites, which were still part of the same company, log in multiple times on each of the formats to get the stuff. And to her horror, she sees that in the evening, there's a driver from one of these entities who comes up, delivers stuff. Another driver shows up with some groceries. Third driver shows up with some of the entertainment media stuff. And to make it even worse, half of these drivers are company drivers and half of the drivers are third-party drivers. Talk about giving a seamless customer experience to your customer, right? So this is how not to do it, right? And the reason this happens is because the business, in its quest to bring products and services to the market, spin off all of these things, at a different point in time, and they're never comprehensive and cohesive, which really creates a very bad taste in the customer's mind and from an experience standpoint. So you said it's about execution. I beg to differ. It's actually about design. If you don't design it right from the ground up and create that ecosystem within the company, forget about creating a consistent experience for your customer.
I think that's a valid point. Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime back on what Alicia said. While most of us have talked about the why and the what, I think she alluded towards the how. And I just wanted to chime back on my presentation as well, because she talked about the most important thing. If you heard what she said, and she comes from the industry, right? It's about taking those salespeople, what we call as commerce agents at the store, up-leveling them to have an effective engagement with the customer, because that's where the rubber hits the ground. And we got to have tools and systems to empower them, because that cannot be manual. Specifically, if you look at the entire retail industry, the churn of these kinds of people is massive, correct? How do you have, and the customer does not change. The customer expects the same behavior irrespective of the commerce agent there. How do you enable these people? That's one. And that part is often missed. The second aspect is, and I think what he also alluded to is, it's very important to design it in a way that all of them is one system. Because the moment you have separate systems, just imagine some information is there online, which the customer has put in. Some information is there in the loyalty system, which has your foot size linked to your mobile number. Some information is there in your ERP or your in-store management system, and your billing system is separate. How do you combine all of them? It's a nightmare, and you can't just do it. And that's where I think it's important where you look at one system which can traverse through the entire journey. And then there are today technologies which can do this. I mean, there are technologies where you can have virtual walls where you see yourself in different fittings without wearing them. You have technology like HoloLens where people like NASA are using this, and people in healthcare is using this to try and imagine things. And I come back to your thing is, how do you see yourself with different footwear without trying it on? And these things are today possible with technology like Kinect, like HoloLens, etc. So how do you build that one platform, coming back to that design, to be able to do all of them? Otherwise, it just becomes, breaking it up into silos.
I totally agree with you. I couldn't agree more with both of what you all have said. But you alluded to virtual walls and virtual trial rooms, I think. One of the things that I'm seeing in the overall industry is that there are a lot of these startups, right, or companies which are established, which are creating these very point solutions, okay, which is about a virtual trial room, or it's about something else, an augmented reality, but in another context maybe. But there are people who are creating very point solutions. So I think it comes back, maybe Vinod, to your concept of design thinking, starting with obviously the customer and their entire processes, and then picking up these solutions that can actually address those aspects. What I'm trying to say is, what I'm trying to really highlight here is, while you've got a lot of people who are trying to sell these point solutions, unless you've got a strategy or a well thought out customer experience process behind the scenes, it probably is not a great idea to get started on just pick those and start using them. That's my personal view. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to highlight. Can I ask Rachna to share, since you're at KPMG, you work with various industries, would you be able to share with us what's happening in the Indian market? How do you see the Indian market evolving, the state of maturity on the customer readiness, customer experience readiness perspective?
I think as far as the Indian market is concerned, Indian by nature are very service oriented, frankly. I mean, so, let's not beat ourselves saying that we don't provide good customer experience. We understand human emotions. We are much, much more bonded out there, and hence we get it. Where the complexity arises is the number of points at which you touch a customer's life, and not all of them is related to a human interaction per se. So it could be a site, it could be somebody, also who's not part of your company delivering that kind of an experience. So I would say that there's a huge amount of conversation which has started happening, and everybody is doing a lot of things that they can in their own way, but on a scale of 1 to 10, I would still say that when it comes to giving a consistent experience, we would be around 3 on a scale of 3 to 4 out here. But coming back to the discussion that we were also having as of now, providing the customer experience when you go bottoms up. I'll take an example of a real estate company, but how many of you have ever bought a house? So when somebody is coming and selling you a house, they actually get people from five-star hotels or the hospitality industry to be able to tell you how beautiful that house is, right? And the moment you book the house, finance takes over. So anybody from finance out here? So I'm largely safe. So how many of you believe finance provides the best of the customer experience? Anyone?
A dangerous question to ask, yeah.
Sorry, I'm just taking the risk because there's nobody, because otherwise KPMG is going to kill me. One of our biggest, audience is the CFO. But when we talk about, providing customer experience, I think people are realizing little by little, and to Sumit's and, Alicia's point out here, it's not about training the salesperson, out there itself. It's an ecosystem which needs to be, I call it more adoption. I won't use the word change management out here as well. Processes have never been a problem. They've never been a problem. Technology, frankly, I mean, we've done so many of these CRM implementation, done all sort of digital things. They've never been a problem. The problem has been always in the last mile connectivity, that delivery out there, that rarely actually happens. And I think that is where the Indian organizations and organizations globally are actually struggling. How do I provide that last mile connectivity? And I'm thinking, when you're talking about your card being swapped for $900, out there I'm just wondering, why would they not ask you to pay for one night and say that, okay, I'm releasing the rest of the money. Next day you just check in again. And it's simple. It doesn't even require any, great thing to happen to be able to provide that. So on a scale of, providing customer experience, we get it. We are service oriented. But in terms of, giving a consistent, I think that's still, something that we are evolving. And it's a tough one. Whether it's India or it's global, it's a tough one.
Yeah, the problem is not only India, exactly agree with you. In fact, I'd like to share an experience which I had about a month back. Middle of May, I had gone for a holiday to Thailand. And locally within Thailand, I was traveling by a cheap airline, right? Cheap as in inexpensive. So I said, let me travel by these guys. They had a certain rule of pre-booking your luggage. Okay, I'm going to talk through this. It's going to take me a couple minutes, but I'll show you what happened. And where it got distorted. Yeah, so basically they expect us to pre-book our luggage. I said, fine, let me go ahead and pre-book my luggage about 72 hours before, right? So I get on my iPad and I'm starting to pre-book. First thing, their website, very difficult to navigate. I managed to find that one place where I say, okay, pre-book my luggage. Now they take me onto a loyalty site which says you have to be a loyalty member, else we cannot do this. So I'm now filling in a certain form which says now become a loyalty member. Yeah, so now I've become a loyalty member. I'm already a little frustrated that I've got to do all this to just pre-book my luggage for a check-in ticket that I booked, okay? I become a loyalty member and I move on. Now in that process, it automatically checks me in, right? I'm a customer, I'm a layman. What's happened is I've now got checked in without pre-booking my luggage. You can call it incompetence on my part, but end of the day, they didn't satisfy the customer. They didn't make it intuitive. That's my view on this, yeah? So I end up pre-booking, not pre-booking my luggage. I'm checked in now, and I realize I haven't pre-booked, which means I would pay a huge amount of money when I get to the airport at maybe triple the price. So I call up those guys. They have a very nice chat window on their website. So I click on the chat. I start chatting with somebody immediately saying, listen, I got a problem. That lady is very polite, all that stuff. She agrees with me and she tells me this is your price. Now I say, okay, this is my price. Give me a confirmation email. The email doesn't come. And coincidentally, because of my lack of trust of a lot of people, I take a photo screenshot of our chat. Okay? But I don't have the price in that chat because it's scrolled up. I now go to the airport at the time to check in, and the airport counter says, you've got to pay this triple the amount. And I say, that's not possible because I've agreed with this person that it is less. And I end up having a big debate with them. I show them my conversation on the chat. The comment I get from the airline at the airport says, no, but that's the call center. We are checking you in here separately. So they immediately are distancing themselves from what the call center had promised. And that's where the whole problem happened, right? So then, which is a pretty well-known airline and works across Southeast Asia pretty well, had such a terrible experience. And I decided I'm going to write an article on it at some point on how can they make sure things are done right. Yeah. So anyone would like to share any more points on that front?
I would just have a minor disagreement with you saying it's not just India, everyone has problems. I believe in India it's a slightly more complex because you're dealing with a working population that is not necessarily having an education level where perhaps they can read and write English. Today when you're trying to elevate those people, say you want to turn your stores into distribution centers down the road to make the customer experience even better with quicker delivery. That hurdle is going to be something because the government and the infrastructure currently, the education system in the country is not strong enough. It is going to be up to private companies to elevate their workforce in order to deliver an excellent customer experience. And that's where I believe India's challenge lays, which may not be necessarily true in other countries.
Fine. On that note, I'm going to put up one more slide. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to move back and forth, but that's reality. Ideally, I should have been able to do it right from there. That would have been the perfect experience. Just give me one moment. Can you help me with this? One of the companies which has thrived on using the customer as their starting point. It's a company called Salesforce, and their CEO had a certain comment, not CEO, a vice president, I guess, had a certain thing to say. This one slide. Open that. Oh man. Okay. It's not connecting. Okay, so it's not connecting, but the comment that he made was very interesting. He said 5 years down the road, the companies that will thrive are the companies that have used the customer to create their interaction model, rather than companies that have used their own thinking to create the interaction model. So the point we're trying to make is, again, make the customer and design everything around really understanding the customer. Don't kind of design it based on what you think is the right thing for the customer. That's the point. Yeah. So on that note, I'd like to take this to the next step and say, okay, we've understood customer experience. We've got a sense of what companies are doing around the world, in India. For a growing retailer or a growing company, I'd like to touch upon what are the building blocks for a company that would like to create or deliver a good customer experience. What do we think are important things to put in? Let's specify two things. One is what are the building blocks? Two is what should be their priorities? In what sequence should they go about it? Yeah. I can leave that to Vinod. I thought you were going to speak anyways.
Okay, I'll take a crack at it. Hello? Hello? Okay. So whether it's a $100 billion company or a $10 billion company or a $1 billion company, I think creating a better customer experience is the Holy Grail for all customers. And we heard it in the beginning of the session, that the reason this is important is great customer experience is equal to great revenue, which is really the bottom line that everybody in the company is trying to look for. And why is it important? Because every happy customer will either be a repeat customer or he's going to go tell his friends and family that this is a great place, and it just creates a very positive cycle. But this is a very, very difficult problem. Like whether it's a big company, medium company, or a small company, and having been there in a couple of different places myself across domains, I can tell you from experience, if it's already in a legacy place which has been in business for 10, 20, 30 years, it's a bigger problem because you've created silos of business entities and units, and now you're trying to get a comprehensive view of how to make it easier. So then from a technology perspective, you need to figure out how do you take from the business design and rewire all the tech debt that has accumulated over a period of 10, 15 years and relay the foundation, right? So this is not an easy problem to solve. If it's a newer company, if you're a startup, I think at least you're a greenfield and you're much better shape to start from scratch. So I'll take a middle ground and say, okay, what's one or two ways of going about it? Assuming that you already have an established base of multiple loyalty programs, multi-business units, and you are a group function, right? And now I can take a specific example of future group per se and how we are going about, trying to create a more holistic customer design aspect, both from an organizational perspective, from a business design perspective, and from a technology perspective, right? So what's very important is to start with how do you create a one view of the customer? Because today your customer could be an online customer where we have, entities like eZone and so on who are already online, where we have used Hybris, so there's a customer who comes in from that channel. You have your huge store footprint, and you have a customer that can come in from your store channel, and then you're trying to create a common customer service, whether it's a CSD in the store or a call center or centralized call center. So how do you connect all these moving parts? I think your journey has to start with how do you create one view of the customer, and that's where I think we have adopted using a customer MDM or master data management to create a common customer reference database, create a common customer record database, dedupe all the customers, and provide that one customer set across the different entities that see the customer. We have multiple loyalty cards, right? As you all probably all know as customers of Future Group, we have many different customer loyalty programs. Then how do you rationalize all those different customers from the different loyalty cards, and then stitch those together and provide one view of the customer, irrespective of whether you're a eZone customer, a Big Bazaar customer, or a Central customer. So the create aspect of this from a technology perspective is, create one view of the customer from using a customer MDM. You rationalize your loyalty, your loyalty platform, and then you also have a call center, a customer service desk or a call center system, which will then be able to take all this, the common view of the customer information from both the loyalty system, from your order system, and from your, from your one view, customer MDM. So creating that one view of the customer so it can give consistent experience across the value chain of the processes, within the entity, within the group, whether it's an online entity or an offline entity, will then come to life. So that's the journey for us, and we have already kick-started. We are in the middle of it. We already implemented some aspects of this, and like I said, it's a journey, and then we are also redefining the business design as we go, and created an office of customer experience, which will directly report to the CEO, so that way we can have one person, irrespective of the channel or the format or the line of business, will actually be an advocate for the customer across the entity. So your customer experience becomes the key mandate, irrespective of which unit or which business unit or line of business that you're running.
Okay, I'm going to ask Meenakshi. You alluded earlier to the fact that every touch point is an opportunity. So if I had to say what are the building blocks in context of that, do you think you would like to elaborate a little bit more?
Sure. So building a bit of a context before I actually get there is, once again I resonate with you, Vinod, is that it's all about data. How can you interact in any manner at any level with the customer unless you have some level of data? It is absolutely insane that we as an organization have got so much data about the customer. The customer comes and spends hours with us, especially in the healthcare business, and chatting us up and giving us all the possible information that we would want about them, including medical tests, including DNA reports. So the data is so rich that it's absolutely insane that we do not have it in a manner which is a single view of the customer. So that obviously is the single most and biggest opportunity for us to create if we need to have any systematic level of redressal or communication or engagement with the customer. So as an organization, we are a good example of how an organization can be very divided in the different things that we are doing. The example that you had taken earlier, Vinod. So the first thing that we are doing now is trying to create a common database, and the most wonderful thing that has happened for us is the Customer 360 that we are creating. Who is the customer, obviously? What do they do? What services do they like? How do they like to pay? Do they give feedback? Are they somebody who complain a lot? What are they saying in the social media, if at all? So what products in the retail are they buying? We have that connect as well. So the opportunity to have a very, very rich data of the customer is there with us. So that's the first step that we are in the process of building. Having done that, the second step is to ensure that everybody has the same data available to them for customer interaction. Whether it is one of our outlets for therapies, or our retail outlets, or our online sites, our call centers, our salespeople, they should all have access to that common data of the customer that we are creating. As of now, each of them have a separate window. It's the elephant. People are looking at the trunk, people are looking at the ear and creating their own interpretations. So once we have that base built, which we are in an advanced stage of building now, that creating that access to that data in a common manner to everybody so that it enables them to have a common conversation with the customer is our primary objective at this time. Having done that, obviously, training has a huge role to play on how to interpret that data and how to convert that into, an engagement is obviously a very, very large part of the plan that we are creating.
So, Samik, you've been consulting to a lot of organizations, talking to them about how they should go about their customer experience journey. What do you typically propose to them as the starting points or the building blocks for them to get to a level of maturity on that front?
So there are two aspects of it. First, I will talk about it from a CRM perspective, and then probably I'll bring it back into retail. My view has always been fix what is broken. And if something is not broken and it's running fine, let it run fine. Whether it's the oldest technology or the youngest technology or it's the latest technology, it doesn't matter. If it's working, it's fine, right? So fix what's broken. If there is nothing which is broken and you want to do something more, then be very clear of what you're trying to achieve and have a KPI for it. Like most people say, I want to automate customer relationship management. And I've been in this industry for 22 years, been in many board meetings, been in many executive steering committees. Many times you go through this entire project and a project is awarded and people come on board and the project starts. You ask the first question, how are you going to measure what you're doing? trust me, there isn't an answer. Correct? And then people will come back and say, oh, you know what, my project failed. But the fact is, you didn't put a measurement before. And if you didn't put a measurement before, how do you know what's the measurement today and what's the measurement tomorrow? Let's say you put up a call center, simplest thing. What are you trying to measure in the call center? Are you trying to measure call drops? Are you trying to measure the number of repeat customers? Are you trying to measure turnaround times? Because each of them have a different solution, right? It's like a headache. A headache is generic. Now, a headache can have paracetamol as the answer, it can have Disprin as the answer, it can have crocin as the answer, it can have a therapeutic treatment as an answer. You've got to be very specific on what are you trying to solve and why, and how will you measure it, and then take it all the way back. And that's been my building block also. And build it slowly. And I think Meenakshi summed it out very well. Everybody needs to have that one view of the system. I think we took many examples. Your example of the call center guy saying something else and this guy saying something else are typical examples where you're looking at one customer from silos. Now I bring it back into retail and I bring it back to what Alicia said. This information, when it comes to a retail, is not information which is there in a CRM. Okay? That's your cracking point. It's an information which is there in your CRM. It's information which is there in your retail POS. It is information which is there in your ERP. Because retail is not about just the customer. It's about goods and products and services and behaviors and past history and buying behaviors and market basket analysis. And then you got to put it together. The moment your building blocks are in silos, you're not going to put it together. Because an MDM thing is very good, can solve a common view across customers. What will solve a common view across a customer, a POS, and an ERP and social? There isn't anything, correct? And you will find another project trying to integrate all of it, which is more costly than all of these projects put together. So I think that's where the clarity and design is important.
Okay, excellent. Alicia, you talked about the sales force, the people on the ground. That stands out to me as an important building block for anyone who's going to be creating a good customer experience. But please share your personal view. What would be your building blocks?
So I find it a bit ironic that being the e-commerce aspect of the business, I end up talking more about the people. But my fundamental belief is that technology needs to, the information and the data that we've been going on about, that Meenakshi spoke about so well, it needs to cut across the company. Today, if the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, you're just going to constantly be moving in fits and starts. So with the design aspect that Vinod mentioned, you need to design the organization to adapt quickly because technologies are going to keep changing. So today, if you ask me what is the perfect omni-channel solution, it doesn't exist. It's going to change tomorrow and it's going to change the next day. How to build the company to be a learning company, to be an adapting company. Today, customer wants and desires and expectations are going to change not just because of the technology or the new Apple phone that Apple will put out, but it will also be because of the changing fashions of Zara. The customer's expectations are going to be changing across a physical and a digital world. In that sense, the company now has to evolve to become an entity that lives in both the physical and digital worlds, across the board, across departments. And therein lies the transformational challenge.
I, in fact, really like that point about being a learning company, because customer expectations are changing, by the day, if not by the, really by the day. And we should be able to respond to them. Absolutely, good point. And Meenakshi, the last point. Yeah.
Possibly, I think one thought, and the more we do these kind of projects in today's world now, is that we are now starting to see ecosystems compete with ecosystems. So we are not, seeing that a company on its own would be able to survive. Technology is possibly evolving so fast that there are a lot of these ecosystems which are being formed by, just getting startups on board. So what you're doing is, if there's a critical part of your, sort of business, which a startup can plug in and give you that agility, start thinking about it. So if there's somebody who does a phenomenal job, let's say on the data side, on the customer side, even somebody like, and I'm taking this name, I don't know if anybody from Porsche is out here, but they get into people's home. They're actually providing, services which is physiotherapy. There's not many people who get into people's home, right? So you can actually go to them and say, okay, you're getting into this home, you're just talking to this patient, how many people reside out there? So if I'm a consumer company or I'm an insurance company or I'm something, can I actually align with them to be able to, start getting to know my customer? So I think while, we talked data, we talked all of it, a large part of what is going to happen in the system is a formation of ecosystem. And that one ecosystem will then start, competing with the other, is how we're seeing it.
So if I understand right, what you're saying is make sure you have your understanding and then be opportunistic in picking up things if it is on your critical path of delivery. Yeah, absolutely. That's the agility piece. Absolutely. So we pretty much come to the end of our session. I'd like to summarize briefly what we've discussed so far. We started with what's the customer experience all about. Yeah. Various viewpoints, but all pretty similar. So it's about brand promise. Yeah, whatever your brand is going to promise, make sure that you are delivering on that. It's about leaving a memory in the mind of the customer as they walk out or as they leave their interaction with you. Every touch point is an opportunity. I think that's very key for all of us. Yeah. And it's an opportunity to create that magic moment where the customer is going to remember you at every specific touch point. Samik nicely alluded to the point that you got to capture the heart share and not just the wallet share. You got to get into the heart. It has to be top of the mind. That's what will bring you a repeat purchase, right? So it's about experience, it's about getting into the mind and into the heart. Obviously, customer is first for all of us. From an execution point of view, we talked about having common systems. I think the point that came out very strongly is about having one view of the customer in terms of data and obviously in terms of the service that we provide to them. But data and one view of that is absolutely critical. Enable the people, that's very critical. Make sure that the people are able to have access to that information and are able to respond pretty well. And we know that last mile execution is important and is a challenge, but yes, we've got to be able to do that. Last mile involves technology as well as people. Yeah, we know that it's not just an India issue, it's across the globe. People are experiencing it in various mature countries also. And be a learning organization. I think that's very critical. Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you brought up, that only when we are constantly learning from our data can we constantly respond to people. And the last point which Rachana alluded to, which was a good point is about agility. Make sure you've got your plan laid out and then be very opportunistic, I guess, in picking up solutions quickly and be able to deliver on that service. Even if not, don't wait for perfection, basically. I think that's what it is. Yeah, so thanks a lot, all of you. I think it's been a really good experience. An intangible topic, trying to make it as discreet for everyone as possible. Yeah, thanks.